Sales are dropping, inventory is increasing, and average prices are down. So what the heck is going on in the Edmonton real estate market? It was only a few months ago when we had the exact opposite situation, with increased sales, raising prices, and less inventory. How could the market shift so quickly? What's causing this change? And what does it mean for you and your plans to buy and sell a home in the Edmonton area? Well, that's what we're going to explore in today's video on the Edmonton real estate market. We're going to start with looking at the market as a whole and looking at stats and infographics that represent the activity for the entire market. Then we'll look at just the single family home market, and then finally we'll end with just the condo market. Depending on which part of the market you're looking at, things are performing a little bit differently, so it's important to look at each segment. As always, I'll give you access to download a copy of these reports in the description below, and please leave any questions or comments that you have for me in the chat below, and I'll make sure that I get back to you. Okay, so let's get right to it. Here's the Edmonton real estate market report for the whole market. Like I said, we're going to start with the total residential, so that summarizes the activity in the entire Edmonton real estate market. First off, we'll look at the listing absorption rate, and we're sitting at 32.74%, which still has us in a balanced market, but getting a lot closer overall to a buyer's market. As of May 2022, we had 6,045 active listings at the end of the month, and there was 1,979 sales that were sold in May 2022, and that's how you get that 32.74% listing absorption rate. If you look over here at the 13-month history, you can see that we went through quite a shift in the last few months. Things really picked up in February when we hit 52% for the market as a whole, which had just put us into a seller's market. And then in March, we went up to over 70%, which put us into a pretty strong seller's market. Then it started to pull back in April when we went down to 49% listing absorption rate, which put us on the cusp of a balanced slash seller's market. And then now this month sitting at 32%, we've come down quite a bit. And like I said, we're now in a balanced market, but getting closer to a buyer's market. This is still strong compared to last year. In May, we were sitting at 31%. So it's pretty comparable to last year in terms of the balance of the market, but only when you're looking at the market as a whole. It's a little bit different when we go and look at single family homes and then we look at condos. But at the market as a whole, this May, it's pretty similar to last May, even though we've had a big shift in the last few months here. Now, the average price for the Edmonton market as a whole was $406,692 in May, which is down 1.61% from April 2022 and up 0.76% from May 2021. So again, this is the average price, so you should always take the average price with a grain of salt. The benchmark prices are a little bit better metric to look at if you really want to track the value over time, whereas this average price can be skewed by a lot of higher priced properties selling or a lot of lower priced properties selling. Over time, it can still be a decent metric to look at, but I wouldn't get caught up on the average price and thinking, oh, if the average price dropped, 1.61%, that means all house values went down 1.61%. It doesn't actually mean that, but nevertheless, we're taking a look at it anyway. If you look at the 13-month history, you can see how we had a big increase in February on the average price of 9.35%. Then it stayed pretty flat in March and went up just a little bit in April, and now it's come down. So we're still up for the year. If you look at the yearly average price, this is a little bit better metric because you've got a full 12 months of data there, so you're less likely to be skewed from high price sales in one particular month or a bunch of low price sales. So you can see for 2022, we're still up 4.99% for the year. And in 2021, we ended up being up 6.86%. So this will continue to update each month as we get more data. Now, if we look a little bit closer at the active and sold listings in the Edmonton market, like I mentioned earlier, there were 6,045 active listings at the end of the month, and there was 1,979 sales. So the number of active listings is up 40.09% from April 2022 and down 0.46% from May 2021. So what's the takeaway there? Well, we had a huge increase in inventory over the last month. Going up 40%, that can really adjust the balance of the market. But if you compare it to last year, our inventory levels are still pretty similar to where they were at last year, only being down 0.46% from last year. In previous months, we had a pretty big gap between the inventory levels last year and this year, whereas that gap is now closed for the market overall. Now, if we look at the sales, with 1,979. That's down 6.56% from April 2022. And that trend has been continuing for a couple months now because we were also down in April compared to March. We hit our peak for sales in March. Looking over at the 13-month history here, you can see we hit 2,384 sales for the Edmonton market. That was our peak for the year. We're unlikely to beat that for the rest of the year. And you can see that we've dropped in April down to 2,118, and now we're under 2,000. That's still up compared to last year. So it's still up 4.1% compared to May 2021. And May last year was still a strong month. So that is important to put into perspective as well. Even though we've come off the highs in sales volume and we have more inventory, it's still solid sales volume in general. Like, it's not like it's weak and the market's getting clobbered. It's just been a big shift in the balance of the market. So looking at this graphic for the 13-month history again, the green bar essentially represents the gap between the number of active listings and the sales. So even though 1,979 is not too far off from 2,118, the reason that we're seeing a big drop here and an increase in the length of the green bar is because of the inventory levels. These top numbers are the inventory levels at month end. So in April, with 4,315 listings and over 2,000 sales, that's what caused that balance. But jumping up to over 6,000 listings and having dropping sales, that's how you end up with a bigger gap between those numbers. And that also represents that absorption rate that we looked at earlier. And that's one of the key metrics to look at whenever you're trying to figure out what's going on in the market. Is it a buyer's market, a balanced market, or a seller's market, and which direction is it going? You can see that we really went up a lot in January, February, March, and now we're kind of coming back down in terms of seeing the balance of the market shift. Now, if we look over at average days on market, we were sitting at 30 days for May 2022, which is down. So homes are selling 3.23% faster because we were sitting at 31 days in April, and it's also down from last year. In May last year, we were sitting at 34 days. Now, if we look at the market distribution, this just shows you at what price points properties are selling and what percentage of the total number of sales are in that price point. You can see we're just about 15% under 200,000, just over 15% between 200,000 and 300,000. The biggest market segment for this month was between 300,000 and 400,000 with 23.7% of the market, then just over 20% between 400,000 and 500,000. Now we're sitting at about 11.5% between 500,000 and 600,000, 6.65% between 600,000 and 700,000, and now just over 3% between 700,000 and 800,000. After that, you get less than 2% between 800,000 and 900,000, and then less than 1% for each bracket after that, between 900,000 and a million, 1 million and 1.5 million, 1.5 million and 2 million, and over 2 million, representing 0.15% of the market in May. That's it for the market as a whole. We're going to move into the single family home segment next. But I just want to remind you, this gives you a great overall view of what's going on in the Edmonton real estate market. But I can give you a lot more specific insights if you reach out to me directly at 780-819-5508. You can either text me or call me at that number. And you can also email me at trevor@trevortardif.com or go to booktrevornow.com, where you can just select a time on my calendar and then I'll call you at that time. So definitely recommend reaching out to me. And I can give you more specific insights based on your situation, whether you're buying or selling, what you're buying or selling, your financial situation, and different things like that. I can give you a lot of insights that can probably help put you at ease in helping you navigate this shifting market. So let's get into the single family home section next. Now we're looking at just the single family home market in Edmonton, and you can see it's a bit of a different story with the absorption rate being a bit higher at 38.36%, which puts us pretty much smack dab in the middle of a balanced market. As of May 2022, we had 2,959 single family home listings and 1,135 listings that were sold in May 2022, and that's how you get that 38.36% listing absorption rate. Now, if we look at the 13-month history again, you can see again the same shift. It looks even a little bit more pronounced here looking at single family homes. Had a big run up in February and March, where at one point we topped 88% listing absorption rate, which was a strong seller's market. And it's pretty crazy to see that we went from just in January sitting at 37%, which is right about where we are now. We were slightly lower in January, and then it shot up in February to 74%, which was a strong seller's market, and then even stronger in March. In April is where it started to scale back, went down to just over 50%, which was right on the cusp of a balanced market and a seller's market, and now we've actually fallen back into a balanced market. So that's a pretty big shift in the market twice here in a period of a few months. This is mostly, in my opinion, being driven by the shifting interest rates. That starts to reduce people's buying power. It adds uncertainty into the market. People can't necessarily afford as much as they could before. And also just having an increase in inventory. We had a lot more people start to put their houses on the market later on in the spring, which really started to shift the balance of the market. So even though it's still robust, we still have a lot of sales because of the balance of the market, mostly driven, I would say, by the inventory and the interest rates starting to eat into that demand a little bit. That's how come we shifted from a strong seller's market into a balanced market for single family homes. Now, the average price for single family homes in Edmonton in May was $499,365, which is down just over 4% from April 2022, but up 4.78% from May 2021. If you look at the 13-month history, you can see again, we had that big increase in February, up a little bit more in March and April. Now we've dropped a little bit in May. Again, I would take this number with a grain of salt. I don't actually feel like single family home prices have dropped really in Edmonton. I'm just not seeing that upward pressure on prices anymore. And we're getting back to that sort of scenario where you really have to make sure you price your property right, because if you're too high, you're just not gonna get the interest that you need, and you can't expect the market to kind of catch up to you. So you want to make sure that you're pricing your property right. And if you're a buyer looking at buying a single family home, this will give you a little bit of a breather, knowing that you're probably not going to see those escalating prices like what we saw in February especially, and it also continued in March and April a little bit. Now, if we look at the average price trend on a yearly basis, you can see that single family homes are up 6.73% for the year. Whereas last year we were up 7.66%. So this number will continue to update each month as we get further into the year. Now, if we look a little bit closer at the active and sold listings, like I mentioned before, there was 2,959 active single family homes on the market at the end of May, with 1,135 sales. So the number of active listings, not quite as big of an increase as what we saw for the market as a whole, where it was over 40%. We're seeing just over 30% increase from April 2022 in single family home inventory, which is still down just slightly from May 2021, but again, it really closed that gap. So it made this May the balance quite similar to the balance of the market in terms of whether it's a buyer's or seller's market, very similar to what it was last year. For sales, we're just down 0.44% from April 2022, so pretty flat. And down 5.81% from May 2021. So it's interesting, we're down more from last year than we are from last month for sales. And this shows you again that balance of the market shifting over the last 13 months. Last May we had just over 3,000 active listings, and we sold just over 1,200, whereas this May we've got just under 3,000 listings and we sold a little bit less than 1,200, 1,135 homes. And again, you can just see how tight that market got in February and March, where we had very few listings, and you can see we've essentially more than doubled the number of active inventory that we have for single family homes compared to February and March. That's what's allowed us to get more green bar here and have a lot more balance in the market instead of it being so strongly in sellers' favor. Now it's a lot more balanced. So the sellers are not going to hold all the cards. Again, I do want to reiterate that this is the market as a whole, and this situation is not always going to play out this way depending on what price point and what areas and neighborhoods that you're looking in. So if you're looking at something under 400,000, for example, it's still a lot more competitive there for buyers. There still isn't very much inventory there. There's a lot of people that want to buy a single family home and they can't necessarily afford any higher than 400 or maybe 450. Some people even have to be, 350, 375. Those are incredibly competitive price points for single family homes. And some of those people are starting to get driven into townhouses or residential attached or half duplexes, but a lot of people still really strongly desire to get into a single family home in that price point. So it's still not uncommon to see multiple offers on those types of properties. I actually had a listing just this last week in the Mill Woods area that was priced at $350,000, and we had we had 16 offers that we had gotten in the first 3 days. So that's a lot of competition from buyers. And obviously that type of activity does bid the price up typically. You're not as likely to see that type of situation, way less likely I would say, if it was a property that was around $500,000, for example. Even if it's priced incredibly well and very attractive, there's just not nearly as many buyers at a higher price point, whereas there's a lot of people looking for a single family home under 400,000. So now if we look at the average days on market, in May 2022, we had 23 average days on market, which was the same as last month. We had 23 days, and last year in May we had 27 days. So still things are moving real quick. 23 days on market, very robust market for single family homes. Now, if we go and look at the market distribution, you can see just over 1% of the market is under 200,000. You're not going to find a lot in Edmonton for a single family home under 200,000. Between 2 and 300,000, you're now seeing 7.22% of the market. And between 3 and 400,000, you're sitting at 23% of the market. The biggest segment of the market is still between 4 and 500,000 with 27.98% of the market there. And then your third biggest segment is between 5 and 600,000, which is still a healthy 18.35% of the market. Just over 10% of the market is between 6 and 700,000, just over 5% between 7 and 800,000, and just under 3% between 8 and 900,000. After that, you're sitting at 1.36% between 900,000 and a million. Same thing for a million to 1.5 million, and then now you're getting pretty low with 0.35% between 1.5 million and 2 million, and 0.27% of the market over $2 million. So next thing we're going to do is look at the condo market. Much different story in the condo market, but again, I just wanted to remind you I can help you so much more and give you so much better insights if you reach out to me directly at 780-819-5508. Either text me or call me at that number. Email me at trevor@trevortardif.com, or go to booktrevornow.com, select a time on my calendar, and then I will call you and offer to help you any way I can. There's no obligation. I just want to help you out, and if we end up doing business in the future, then that's great, but if we don't, that's fine too. So don't hesitate to reach out. Okay, so let's take a look at the condominium market in Edmonton. So we were sitting at a 24.73% listing absorption rate in May, and we had 2,390 listings and 591 sales in May 2022, and that's how you get the 24.73% listing absorption rate, and that puts you back into a buyer's market. You can see that in April we were sitting at 32.49%, which did have us technically in a balanced market, and in March we were at 37%, which was the condo market's strongest part of the year, where we were almost in the middle of a balanced market for 1 month for apartments, well, for condos, not just apartments, any type of condo. And so things have come back down for the condo market. It's still doing better than it was last year though. So that is one thing that I want to point out, that in May of 2021, we were sitting at a 14.67% listing absorption rate, and sitting at 24%, we have a good 10% increase in the absorption rate there. So even though things have come, the balance has shifted since the highs in March, it's still a stronger market than it was last year, which is going to be a bit of a relief for condo owners out there, that it's still better than it was last year. Now, if we look at the average price for condos in May, it was $235,064, which is up 0.62% from April and up 1.36% from May. Again, you could see in March is when we got our biggest increase in condos. It was kind of like the month after of what we saw in single family homes, when I think the biggest increase was in February, but we had a decent increase in March and then lost some ground in April, and we're just up a little bit in May. You can see this is kind of up and down a lot. Condos can be skewed even just from, are we having more townhouses selling? Are we having more apartments selling? And are they cheap ones or expensive ones? So again, I'd take the average price with a grain of salt. If you look at it for the year, we're up 3.7% in 2022 for condos, whereas last year we were up 3.9% for the whole year. Now, if we look a little bit closer at the active and sold listings, again, like I mentioned, we had 2,390 active listings at the end of the month and 591 sales. So the number of active listings are up 16.59% from April and down 21% from May 2021. And this is basically what's causing the difference in the balance of the condo market this year compared to last year. Even though we're up in inventory compared to last month, over 16% compared to last month, if you remember the single family homes, I think we were up either 30 or 40%, and the market as a whole was either up 30 or 40%. So you can see it's the single family homes that are really lifting that. I think the single family homes were up 40%, and that's how the whole market was up 30% in terms of inventory. So not as much of that is coming from the condo market. If we had seen just as big of an increase in inventory in condos as we saw in single family homes, then the balance of the market would look a little bit worse than it does. And we're still seeing actually less condo inventory than we did last year is still a good sign like I said, that the condo market, even though we are not at the peak of activity, it still is improving overall compared to last year. Now, if we look at the number of sales, we're down 11.26% from April. No surprise there. We saw how the market shifted overall, but we're up 31% from May 2021, which also helps with that balance of the market. If you look at May 2021, we had over 3,000 listings and 449 sales, and now we've got about 2,400 listings and 591 sales. So that helped switch the balance of the market. Still really tall green bars here, which show that, again, the condo market, as it has been for a long time, is still mostly in buyers' favor. We briefly got out of a buyer's market there, but now it's back into a buyer's market. So make sure you price your condo right if you want it to sell. Otherwise, it's just going to sit there and rot. All right, so now if we look at the average days on market, you're sitting at 45 days in May 2022, which is down from last month. We were sitting at 46 days, so slight improvement there. And last year we were sitting at 49 days, so it's also an improvement there as well. Now, if we look at the market distribution, we're sitting at just over 45% of the condo market under 200,000, then down to 34% between 200,000 and 300,000, and just under 15% between 300,000 and 400,000. After that, you get a steep decline to 3.36% of the market between 400,000 and 500,000, and then less than 1% for every market segment after that. So that pretty much wraps it up for the Edmonton housing market report for June 2022. You can download a copy of all these reports. There's a link in the description. And if you want to watch more market update videos, make sure to check out this playlist over here to watch more Edmonton market update videos. And you can also subscribe with this button over here. Again, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video.